Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be comparing 308 versus 6.5 Creedmoor and trying to get a handle on is 6.5 Creedmoor something that we should be considering, something that we should be getting into. As of right now, I'm a 308 guy, okay? I'm primarily a 5.56 and 9mm guy, but here's the thing, 5.56 handles all of my needs as far as soft targets out to 500 yards, even 600 yards, right? I've even had hits out to 800 yards with match ammunition, with 77 grain Sierra Kins. I can get it all the way out to 800 yards. Okay? So on soft targets, 5.56 works great, you know, between 500 and definitely 700 yards, okay? Right, and 9mm, of course, is my backup gun, right? So 5.56 works great. So if I'm going to get into 308, if I'm going to, which, why did I even get into 308s? To me, 308 is anti-material, okay? Particularly vehicles, right? So we're thinking SHTF, Mad Max, Road Warrior here, okay? So if you got the Road Warriors basically trying to, charging at you, you want to be able to start shooting at them at 500 yards and put effective hits and be able to damage the vehicles and basically penetrate the vehicles and hit, like even after something goes through the glass or through the dashboard, it's going to be able to do damage to the attackers inside the vehicles, okay? So that's what I see 308 as. It's not anti-personnel, it's anti-material. And you might say, why not a 50 cal, right? Because 50 cals are really expensive, and even the people that have 50 cals, they almost never have more than 100 rounds, okay? They usually have well less than 100 rounds. Even the 338 Lapula guys, they got less than 100 rounds. So all those fancy like the tip, the military anti-material ammunition, most people that even have those guns don't have enough ammunition. So to me, in order like for any ammunition to be viable for an SHTF type situation, I mean, you got to have at the bare bones minimal 2,000 rounds, okay? And like 2,000 rounds is like anytime I'm going to buy another gun, I immediately order 2,000 rounds just for that gun, okay? It doesn't matter if I already have additional, have ammunition of that same caliber. I'm getting another 2,000 rounds because to me that's like proof to myself that I'm willing to commit to shooting that gun more, because buying more guns for me doesn't mean I shoot my older guns less. It means more overall shooting, okay? It means I'm willing to shoot a lot more, okay? Not shift my training from one gun to the other, okay? So that's kind of like the testament. If I'm buying another gun, I'm immediately buying 2,000 rounds for that gun, okay? Otherwise, I'm not buying the gun, okay? So that's why, like, 308 right now is like my anti-material for the Mad Max Road Warriors. And I've done videos where I'm out to 500 yards, and I'm actually just using a red dot and a magnifier, and I'm getting hits, right? You can search my channel name, and then 308 500 yards. You'll see the video. You can just I'll include a 308 playlist below that you can just click on. You can see all my AR-10 videos. Okay. So the question now that I'm considering is, okay, 308 is great. A lot of people into the 6.5 Creedmoor. I mean, is that something I should be considering? Is there a real additional benefit for my goal, which is anti-material at distance, okay, or even close, right? Because even inside of 500 yards, even at 200 yards, right? If you're shooting through a vehicle to stop attackers, right? The road warriors, right? Obviously, you're not going to shoot through the engine block. You're going to do a lot of that. You can do damage to the other components in the engine, but as you start shooting higher into the dashboard, you can shoot through the dashboard, and if the bullet has enough power behind it, it can go through the dashboard and still do damage after it comes through it. Okay, so with 308, right? You guys have seen me do videos where I'm actually measuring bullets through a chronograph, doing momentum and energy calculations. These numbers here are not my own, right? And the reason is because since I've shot 6.5 Creedmoor before, but I don't have a gun here that I own that I can collect my own data like now, right? So I went to somebody else and I took their 6.5 data, and it made sense to also take their 308 data. because this dude that I got this information from, he's like a big hunting dude. So he's using like premium ammunition. So I wanted to make sure that the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 308 Creedmoor, sorry, the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 308 ammunition were of the same class, right? We're not just using like premium here and target there or target there and premium here, right? So that's why I took all this information from somebody else, okay? So with the 308, all right, with the 168 bullet at the muzzle, right, it's giving this dude a velocity of 2904 and an energy of 3146, right? 3146. And then the 6.5 Creedmoor 143 bullet, 143 grain bullet with a velocity of 2750 is giving him an energy of 2401. Okay, so there's like there's a difference in energy here of like some 500 foot-pounds of energy. So that's like the difference of a 357 Magnum at the muzzle in favor of the 308. Okay, so there's no question there that the 308 is always going to have more energy. Now I'm going to stop talking about velocities because the velocities can kind of get confusing. Because remember, if you got different bullet weights, you know, it shifts the numbers. But energy and momentum, that's like the product, right? That's like the net result. So that's why for the remainder of the video, I'm mostly going to talk about energy and momentum. I mean, the velocity, it really doesn't. The only time that I think velocity is something that like it would make a difference here, right? For this is with something that has a higher velocity, you have less of a bullet drop. So you know, with the 308 at distance, you know, you have to dial, your holdover is going to be a lot more, okay, versus 6.5, okay. So right off the bat, like that 6.5 has the velocity advantage in terms of your holdovers are going to be less. Okay, the 308 has the advantage in terms of you got a fatter bullet making a bigger hole, okay. And right out of the gate at the muzzle, it's got more energy, right? 500 foot-pounds, more energy right out of the muzzle. So you know, that's an immediate advantage to the 308. Okay. Now, when you get out to 725 yards, okay, the energy on the 308 and the 6.5 Creedmoor, right, as this guy had measured it, they even out. Okay, so they've got the same energy, right, at 725, and the reason is because the 308 is a fatter bullet. It's less aerodynamic, right? Or the air, basically the wind is slowing it down more. So as it slows down at 725 yards, it reaches a point where it has the same energy as the 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, 725 yards now, and then at 1,000 yards, right? The 6.5 Creedmoor has an advantage, right? It has 724 foot-pounds of energy. Versus 648 on the 308. Okay, so it's got, I don't know, roughly about about 100 or so more foot-pounds of energy. Okay, at 1,000 yards on the 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, so that's kind of like the difference of a 22 long rifle. Okay, at 1,000 yards, the 6.5 Creedmoor is more powerful by the value of a 22 long rifle. Okay, so that's not a huge whopping difference, but it's there. It is more powerful. But here's the thing: the energy. If you're looking at energy alone, that doesn't give you the full story, right? Energy to me is kind of like the whipping action, right? Like the, you know, like, because you know there's energy and there's momentum. Okay, momentum is like the ability to really punch through. Okay. So if you take a whip which is really light and you whip it really fast, right, you can break skin, okay? You can cut skin, but the whip usually doesn't do much damage beyond the surface. It can rip skin, but it doesn't break bones, okay? You know, versus let's say hitting somebody with a baseball bat, the bat has more mass behind it, okay? It may not cut the skin, but it can break bones deep inside the body. You can break bones, you can break arm bones, rib bones. So to me, especially in terms of anti-material, right, I think the momentum number is way more important. Okay, all right. So we're going to look at momentum here now, right? Because I think that this is where the true story is as far as, okay, what do you want to use for anti-material, 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, so here's the thing: momentum is not a number that is commonly used, right? It's gonna calculate. Now these are both calculated numbers, so we gotta kind of put it into perspective. And for the purpose of putting it into perspective, I've got some numbers up here, right, to kind of give us a point of reference. Okay, so we're looking at a bow and arrow, a 70-pound hunting bow, right, basically yields an energy of 63. Okay, 63 foot-pounds. 63 foot-pounds is the same energy that you get out of a 22 pistol. Okay, and it has a momentum of 15. Okay, so that's what your hunting bow typically has. Now, these hunting bows have taken many deer. Okay, so this kind of tells us something here. What does the arrow have going for it? Okay, it's obviously it's not generating a whole lot of energy. It's not generating a whole lot of momentum, but it has it makes a bigger hole, right? Because it has like a triangular, usually arrowhead. So the size of the arrowhead, basically the bigger hole seems to be important if we look at a typical hunting bow, right? Which basically has the same energy as a 22 out of a pistol. Okay, so that kind of makes us think and say, hey, wait, the 308 is making a bigger hole. That, if we compare it to the hunting bow, right, the hunting arrow, that must be a pretty important thing, right? Because the hunting arrows are pretty effective, right? Now, if we look at a crossbow, a hunting crossbow, which has a draw weight of 185 pounds versus the 70 pounds of the hunting bow, right? That has an energy of 135, okay, but a momentum of 24, okay? So now, as far on the energy side, we're up to a 22 long rifle out of a rifle, right? That's the energy level that we're up to. But the momentum like really jumps up, right? You gotta so that ability to punch through, right, jumps up. And in fact, if we compare it to the 9mm, right, 115 grains, right, 1180 velocity, energy of 356, right? That's very typical of what I see out of 9mm. Target ammunition. Tula gives me that. A lot of the federal usually comes in lower, but 356 is very typical of what I see out of 9mm ammunition. That only has a momentum of 19. Okay, so the crossbow, okay, delivers more punching power than the 9mm. Okay, by a factor of, what's that? That's a difference of 5. Okay. So again, and that's because the bolt that's is 478 grains versus 115 grains. So the mass of the bolt, right, delivers a lot more punching power. Okay, that's why crossbows are so effective, and why during medieval times they were used to penetrate armor. Right, you used crossbows against knights in armor, right? Because it had this punching power that after it penetrates the armor, it continues to go through and punch through. Okay, so that's that. So this is an important consideration if you consider the difference. Now let's look at 5.56, right? With 55 grain, 3,100 feet per second, energy of 1173. So our energy jumps way up here, right? Because you've got a light bullet going really fast. And again, the 5.56 is the equivalent of the whip, okay? Like when you whip something, you got something really light going really fast. And because it's going really fast, right, that's why 5.56 is able to penetrate steel rims, okay? But then if you're shooting like when I shoot these steel drums, right, and I've done videos where I'm shooting steel drums, if you line up 3 steel barrels, right, thin-skinned barrels that you can typically penetrate with a 22, right? If you line 3 of them up with 15 feet in between them, by the time it gets to the 3rd barrel, and I've done a video on this, it turns to dust. The 22 completely breaks up. So because it's a light bullet, okay, it has a lot of initial power when it hits the surface, right? When it hits that steel rim, it can actually penetrate the hard steel rim. But once it goes through that thing, it doesn't have the ability to continue punching through, and that's sort of reflected in the momentum number here, because it's got, basically it has the same momentum as the crossbow, right? The crossbow that you buy at Walmart for whatever, like $200 or something. It has the same momentum, the same ability to punch through. 5.56, 55 grain 5.56, and your crossbow. Okay, and as far as its ability to punch through, it's only like a little bit ahead of the 9mm, right? You got 24 versus 19, so that's a difference of 5. Okay, so this kind of puts the momentum numbers into perspective, right? All right, right. So now let's look at the 308. 308, when you do the momentum calculation, right? It's got a momentum of 70. Okay, versus the 6.5 Creedmoor, right? And this is at the muzzle, right? At the muzzle, okay, it has a momentum of 56. So that's a difference of like 14. Okay, and if you look at like these numbers up here, a difference of 14, because now we have some perspective over here. Let's say the difference between 9mm and 5.56. A momentum difference of 14 is quite significant. Okay, so inside of 500 yards, the 308 has a huge momentum advantage as far as its ability to punch through things, compared to the 6.5 Creedmoor, its ability to punch through things and continue to do damage. Okay, now when we get to the 725 yards, right, that's where the energy equalized, right, where the 308 at 725 yards, the 308 and the 6.5 Creedmoor, they each had an energy of 1032. Okay, but then if we look at the momentum numbers, right, the 308 is still ahead. Okay, you got the 308 at 500 at 725 yards has a momentum of 40 versus the 6.5 Creedmoor, which has a momentum of 37. So it's ahead by a factor by a value of 3. Okay, and again, it's like, okay, what's the value of that 3? Well, if you come up here and look at these other things I mentioned before, it's quite significant. But the point is that it's not less. Okay, it's more. So at 725 yards, even though the energy has equalized, the 308 still has more momentum, more ability to punch through. Okay, then when we go out to 1,000 yards, right, where the 6.5 Creedmoor had more energy, right? It had an energy of 724 versus 648, right? So the 6.5 Creedmoor is about 100 foot-pounds more, a little bit more, I think. So it's more powerful by, let's say, the power of a 22 long rifle, right? But if you look at the energy, the momentum calculation, okay, the 308 is still ahead. It's got a momentum of 32. The 6.5 Creedmoor has a momentum of 31. Okay, so by a small amount, the 308 is still punching harder at 1,000 yards. Okay, and again, this is with both of these being premium bullets. Okay, so this momentum number, I think, explains why lots of hunters say that the 308 is still more effective at taking large game at distances, right? If you look at the energy numbers, it doesn't give you the full story. You have to look at the momentum numbers, right? Because that's the ability to punch through. And if you're trying to take down a large animal or, basically punch through barriers, it's not just the initial impact on the surface that matters, which is what energy represents. It's what happens after that initial impact, and that's what the momentum number is going to give you. Okay, so I think that this momentum number here, that explains why the 308, based on this, why lots of hunters report that 308 is still more effective at distance versus 6.5 Creedmoor. So now, where is the advantage of the 6.5 Creedmoor? Okay, because it does have some advantages, less recoil, right? So I mean, that's part of the reason why we use 5.5. That's probably the main reason why we use 5.56 most of the time. It's got less recoil, easier to control, put more hits on target, cheaper, right? So the less recoil is an issue, is a factor. It's the 6.5 Creedmoor has less drop. Okay. It maintains a higher velocity further out, right? So at 1,000 yards, it's 15-10 feet per second versus 13-18 feet per second. Okay, So with the 6.5 Creedmoor, if you're looking to hit soft targets at 1,500 yards, because remember the energy has already dropped into pistol territory. Like you're in the 700s here, right? 600. So at 1,500 yards, you're going to be getting something like 300 foot-pounds of energy. So you're in like 9 millimeter energy, right? At 1,500 yards. Okay. The 6.5 Creedmoor, because it has less of a drop, will probably allow you to make hits on soft targets at 1,500 yards. Okay, if that's what you see yourself doing. Okay, whereas the 308 is probably going to struggle a little bit more at that distance. It's gonna lose a lot more energy. It's going to lose power. I expect that at that distance, the momentum number, and I didn't have data to throw up here, but at that distance, I suspect that the momentum number is actually going to be less than the 6.5 Creedmoor, right? Because you can see how as you go further out, the 308 is moving closer and closer to the 6.5 Creedmoor, and I suspect by, if not, by maybe 1,200 yards, it's going to the momentum number of 308 is going to drop below the 6.5 Creedmoor, and is going to continue to drop probably at a faster rate. So at 1,500 yards plus, the 6.5 Creedmoor is definitely going to have the advantage. Okay, but that's where I see 6.5 Creedmoor. Right, if you're shooting 1,500 yards plus, definitely 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, so that's my analysis of 308 versus 6.5. Like where I'm at right now, like it makes a lot more sense for me to continue to invest in 308, keep building up stockpiles of 308, get more 308 guns this way, especially because remember 308s, like if you have AR-10s, they're not standardized, so you can't just take parts from one company and throw them into the other. Right now, I've started off with Palmetto AR-10s. I got a 20-inch Palmetto AR-10, the PA-10 Gen 3. It makes sense for me to get another one, maybe in 16 inches, and at least that way the parts are interchangeable, and I can. And also with Palmetto, I'm able to easily buy extra parts, off of their website, right? Extra bolts. I already got an extra bolt, so I can buy more bolts and other parts that maybe are proprietary to the Palmettos. And like charging handles that might be proprietary to that. I think it's a DPMS Gen 1 pattern. Okay, so like the charging handle. So to me it makes sense to if I'm going to get more 308s to continue to invest in that same pattern. Okay, so some things for you guys to think about. Let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments below. I'll talk to you all soon. I'll give you guys a close up so you can see these numbers here.